Hey, got him. We did it! 1,000. 1,000 corruption for this very off-meta build. On the dot. Woo! Easy first try. Yeah, first couple tries. Yeah. That was fun. Hey there everyone, welcome. It's Snoo, and today I'm finally bringing you my endgame build guide from the start of Last Epoch 1.0. A blind run-through has now evolved all the way into a super endgame bow marksman build, which is evidently one of the weakest archetypes in the game. I have just cleared 1,000 corruption Orobyss. You saw it in the intro. I'm going to showcase a 1,000 corruption Echo. No funny business, no ward, just good old-fashioned endgame showcase scaling. There it is. You can see the damage. You can get a sense of how the build plays. Honest to God, guys, I've said this in the live stream. This is one of, if not the most enjoyable build I've ever played in any ARPG. We're talking 30-plus years of playing ARPGs pretty seriously. I don't know if I've ever had this much fun playing an actual build. Even just standing still and firing these arrows, just super satisfying the way it works. It is a double proc-based build off of Explosive Trap into detonating arrows, as well as Dragon Song, a highly scalable spell cast proc off of crit. Makes for some pretty awesome, enjoyable gameplay. Certainly not the strongest build out there, but hey, you know, when we're talking about games, it's all about having fun. And I'm telling you, this build, biggest sales point is just how fun it is to play. If you like a dynamic rogue-based bow playstyle, I'm pretty sure you're going to love this build. So we're going to start in formulaic fashion with a 1,000 corruption Echo map showcase. Then I will show you the gear that I'm sporting. And we'll get into the skills and then the passives, and we'll cap it off with the LastEpochTools site so you can see the build guide. It's laid out before you. And one thing you're going to notice is that it's actually representative of what I'm playing with right now in the showcase. Got to take just a second here to comment. I've seen a lot of my fellow content creators, good people, making some really skimpy builds, just skating by on the bare minimum, setting up a build together, not really leveling it up, not even getting all the points, not getting even half of the uniques or legendaries involved. And I'm here to tell you you're not going to have that with me. This is a fully fleshed out in-game build, 4 weeks plus playing this same build every single day. And this is where we're at right here. I've held back until I got it at a super endgame status because I wanted to bring it to you guys. So it was tried and tested to the max. So the build is linked in the description below. And if you want to stick around, you're going to hear me talk about it. And I'll explain how all of it works from here on out. So let's start by going to a monolith. I'm going to take you to my favorite place where a lot of people are farming. Good old Blood, Frost, and Death. And this monolith is currently at 1,000 corruption on the dot. So you're about to see a monolith Echo ran at 1,000 corruption. You already saw the Orobyss Kill, which I think got to see proves the build is obviously pretty good. That's baseline. And we'll just do this little Echo here. Here's the skills. We got Shuriken, Explosive Trap, Net, which I don't use a whole lot, Shift, and Cinder Strike. With Detonating Arrow also on the back end, but it is fully procced. So I'll do a little jumping around, shifting every few seconds. Get a major armor buff for that. Try to manually dodge things, especially at 1,000 corruption. Because, yes, I can absolutely get one-shot by things. But you'd be surprised. Actually, most one-shots are not actually one-shots unless they're from a boss. Typically, just die very fast, if so. But if you watch my health closely enough, you're going to see me get hit, probably, eventually. A lot of small enemies just getting nuked down by the dragon fire. Looks like we got a seal the gate objective here. Not my favorite layout. Prefer something a little more open. But that's alright. can see that dodge is a big part of the build, either manually dodging or just dodging from all the stats. You can see in combat, my armor goes all the way up to 62%, 42% dodge. That increases even further with Dusk Shrouds, of course. And that's perhaps a good item. Wow. Okay. Crit multi. Just a little bit more. I think I will absolutely show you one of the experimental mobs here, since people like seeing those. It's sort of a baseline. We'll just see what happens when I unlock him on there. But anyway, hopefully you got a little bit of a sense of the build. Using shurikens to disengage, using shift to get around. There, I took some hits, you can see. And even got stunned there, but I got a lot of stun resistance. So the hit's got to be pretty big to actually stun me. Alright, we'll finish it off over here with one last very special mob to kill. Show you a little bit of that net action so you can see. I typically don't use it except for really, really fast enemies. So, drop a few traps down. And he's dead. So you can kind of get a sense of how that is. And again, that's on 1,000 corruption. So, there you go. There's a boss showcase at the front end. There's an echo showcase, both at 1,000 corruption. Hopefully you believe now that the build is certainly capable of endgame. I know a lot of people didn't believe that when I said it probably would be a couple of weeks ago. But here we are. We're going to start with the most pivotal item here, a Dragon Song, 3 LP in my case, really only mandating a crit hybrid roll. I started playing this build when I had a tier 5 crit hybrid roll, and it didn't have a 100% crit chance. That's okay. Really want to try to get 100% crit chance on the build after you start scaling everything. Mine only says 59% right here, but it does go up to about really, really close to 100%. And with this roll on here and some of the other passive skill chance points, you will see I have actually 0 extra crit chance on any of my gear. Absolutely 0. So, really only need the massive tier 7 crit hybrid roll on the bow. Really want to get attack speed too. Stun chance isn't super mandatory. If I had a 4th mod on here, it would be fire penetration. We'll just get all the uniques out of the way. First of all, you'll notice I only have 5 uniques. Or 5 legendaries, rather. Plus an idol, I guess. Got a 3 LP Peak of the Mountain. It's a very, very good slam. This doesn't actually match exactly what I recommend on the build guide. I think Endurance Threshold is going to be a bigger deal because that is one of the ways I'm scaling my defense. You can see a lot of endurance going on there. But at any rate, this is where we get all of our crit chance through the tier 7 crit hybrid roll and through a nicely well-rolled Peak of the Mountain. And you basically have practically 100% crit chance there. No leech. Well, we still get some life on crit, thankfully. But one of the reasons why I vied to not go the high life route and do endurance instead is because I don't have an enormous amount of recovery. So to flesh out the smaller window of recovery, we're able to maximize what recovery we have by just kind of shrinking the total life pool going for an endurance route. Anyway, that is the helmet. Very typical there. Morning Frost, major scaler. And absolutely mandatory to scale Dragon Song up any serious amount. Each point here grants evidently a 900% damage multiplier to the spell skill Dragon Fire on crit. You can look into that if you'd like. That is where a major point of scaling is coming from. Movement speed, obviously the most important one here. These are very expensive boots, even on 2 LP, to be fair. But moving on, Immolation Oblation. Now, this build most closely resembles a max roll build that I did eventually look at. It featured a Dragon Song proc-based build, no trap, no detonate arrow, but it featured the Meteor build instead. You might be aware of it. It was the max roll's Dragon Song build. It came out before 1.0, and I decided after further testing that was terribly inferior. Just going for the Meteor. Can't even hold a candle to this. This was an honorable mention in there, but guys, this is an extra 40 spell damage, okay? This is going to be way more damage than a Meteor would have been by just adding 40 spell damage to Dragon Song's Dragon Fire itself. And the Meteor has a massive delayed effect. Dragon Song does not. It instantly hits things, instantly stuns things, and instantly saves your life indirectly numerous times. Trust me. Over here, we got Soulfire. I have a 4 LP version of this. It's very, very cheap, legendary, or unique to make. And the build guide suggests a 3 LP. I don't have a 4 LP suggestion on any of the build guide, point, to be fair. Again, endurance, threshold focus, should have at least +3 Cinder Strike, which you'll see why when we look at the skills. Crit multi is, of course, a very, very important stat. You would have seen in combat, I had, I think, a 415% crit multi, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a lot of scaling there. Over here, we're getting a bunch more endurance threshold. I prefer a higher than tier 4 sealed mod here, so these are not the best gloves I could have, but they are very good. Increased area of skills, extremely powerful for this for many reasons. The detonate arrow damage area, probably the least important thing. But we have shuriken, able to hit more wide range, I think. Maybe. We have the explosive trap, being able to trigger more closely. Very important there. And most importantly, we got Dragon Song, being able to reach further and wider than it would otherwise. So these are 4 very good mods, or I should say 5 very good mods, and that's the theme on here. All of my exalted items are well-rolled 5 modded items. We'll go up to the amulet next, which also has increased area skills, so that's a huge amount of increased area across the board for the build. Crit multi again. Great place to get % dodge if you can fit it in. The build has a lot of flat dodge after Dusk Shrouds especially, and it can scale tremendously well off % dodge, even though it won't necessarily save you from 1 taps. Gotta get frailty somewhere in the build. Chose it here. Stun avoidance, the best mod decision I ever made, somewhere around the 3-week mark, was to get stun avoidance on the build in a big way. Huge help here. Absolutely recommend get stun avoidance somewhere on your build. And that's another reason why I wanted to try and crank up the endurance threshold higher and go for a smaller window of life, so I might get stunned a little bit less because I'd take less of a hit on the health globe per hit. With the quiver, both attack speed, of course, dexterity, you could do that instead. I'll try to get shred on here. This is not the best craft quiver, but it's pretty good. Need to get chill on hit somewhere in the build because chill and slow do stack. Some people might be wondering why I'm not using a unique quiver here. There is a quiver that has armor and glancing blow. It's probably good. I probably wouldn't wear it unless I had at least 3 LP, preferably 4 LP. And the problem is because this quiver has essentially, slow, a more damage multiplier, which I might as well count as 2 affixes, speed, dex, shred, fizz. And this quiver essentially is an 8 affix quiver. By stat weight, or at least in my head it is, because I give bonus to a more multiplier affix that you can't get otherwise. And yeah, I think the Spider Silk Quiver is probably even better than any other quiver you could get here. I forgot to mention with Soulfire, we get some really nice synergies here with armor, and also get another more multiplier. Also get some increased fire damage. Don't get anything from Hungering Souls or any of that, but the increased armor is a big deal, which we'll see in a minute here when we look at some of the skills and why I was able to have, 62 or 64% damage reduction through armor. Part of that was because of Soulfire here. You can see that I'm stacking the best armor bases here, so a lot of extra armor, and the armor roll on the Immolation Ablation, which I probably should have a 2 LP of this by now, but the rolls really do matter a lot. Need a high % roll on everything. So I was able to get crit multi or crit damage, reduced crit damage taken all the way up to 100% with these 2 items right here. Moving on to the armor, we got Armor Shred effect here, which is nice to get a little bit of that in. Tier 6 Dex. I think the mana roll is pretty important. It's one of the last things I changed in the build. Definitely makes you feel better. It smooths out the explosive trap and the sprinkler and all that stuff. Allows you to get more traps, more detonate arrow uptime, and which in turn gives you actually more dragon fire procs. Void Res, need to have at least 1 roll in there, about 55% or more. And the Armor Shred effect is really good stat weighting there at tier 2 only. And then we got just the rings remaining here. So just basically trying to flesh out Endurance Threshold as much as I can. Or Persona Endurance. Probably the single best item that I have, if you don't count legendaries, is this ring here. Got a tier 7, tier 6 terrific item here. You need a throw damage mana cost reducer by you need at least 1 of these, because shurikens will cost 1 mana. Can't cast it if you're negative mana. Can't get away or disengage if you're negative mana. One of the most frustrating things about the build or about the game in general is the fact they can't use shift whenever it's on cooldown if I have negative mana. So I could manage mana a little bit better, but this build, if you get maximizing damage, you're going to be at negative mana certainly from time to time. I would prefer if I had at least one crit chance roll on one of these. An elemental damage prefix and a crit chance prefix would probably be best there. But these two bases smooth out the resistances really well. Check out the resistances. You can see that, I've lined these up. This is about as good as you can get. You might be wondering where the poison resist came from, because I haven't showcased that. That came from here, which is a super, super good idol, and absolutely, in my opinion, pretty mandatory for the build. You wouldn't necessarily have to get poison resist here. You could get it rolled somewhere else in the build, but just in terms of the value of this idol, this is the most valuable idol that I have in here. Throne of Ambition is pretty dang good too, since we're scaling both cold and fire. Fire a little bit harder maybe than cold, but overall just scaling both really well. And so this idol has a permanent place in my arsenal. Over here we got another excellent idol here with increased armor shred effect. You don't necessarily have to have this suffix, but yeah, pretty good. You could run even a third one of these and sub out the grand or large shadow idols, but I currently don't have any armor shred duration without it, so I can get it right here. Go ahead and getting percent life is fine. I was playing this build with 1100 life also at this level. It was fine with the endurance threshold, kind of cover you there. Smoothing out the resistances, getting a little extra armor. That's how we arrived at everything here. Got a lot of gold, which means I could go probably purchase that 4LP Peak of the Mountain, which would be likely my next upgrade. But anyway, moving on. Let's go to skills. We got Explosive Trap here. Now, it's a trap sprinkler. I'm calling it the Fire Sprinkler build because of this node here. And it's just sort of jetting out fire, breath, and the detonating area. It just seemed to fit pretty well. So the trap sprinkler is involved. We got these nodes here. It's a 90% chance. The spawns are going to drop 5 separate traps at once, and then they have a 90% chance per trap to drop around 2. Again, it drains your mana in a major way there, even though we're taking subtle sabotage. The detonating arrows also cost a little bit of mana. I'm curious to see how much that is. Actually 44 mana there. Detonating arrow is 14 mana. And then arrow traps is the enabler for detonating arrow. Check it out. Double dipping, dex scaling damage, terrific. Love the fact that we can maximize dex scaling. How much dex do I have again? Oh yeah, 102. You could get way higher than that, hypothetically. But at any rate, blast rain turns into arrows. We got, yeah, all of this here with a little bit of reduced mana cost. Smoke trap, very important, getting some extra glancing blow. Only got around 50% glancing blow. This can help drive it up, in some cases, all the way up to 100% chance if you're throwing down a ton of traps, especially on a boss. Adaptive fuse, very important. It allows this way it play out, works even in things like arenas where the monsters are just like jetting at you really fast. Still works nicely there. You do, in fact, get the full-blown fire scaling. It's the fire tag. You notice I have 22 points in here, even though I have spec'd into cold and static, because it does actually drop a fire trap. Pretty cool, the fact that it works that way. And that is it for Explosive Trap. Then we'll move on to Cinder Strike, which is essentially a generator. Can you believe one of my favorite builds of all time is an actual generator build? I was surprised to know, too. Can you believe, on top of that, that it only fires 1 arrow? A 1 arrow build is actually that much fun. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Well, you know, it's cool. It's like a combo generator. And the first arrow that fires really, really strong. With the Burning Daggers, or Flaming Fury here, getting the extra daggers. These also attribute to proccing Dragon Fire even more. Getting Fire Shred here. If you notice in the target dummies, we got Fire Shred. We got Cold Shred through the Blessings. We got Armor Shred out the wazoo. We're chilling. We're slowing. We're igniting, even though it doesn't matter a whole lot. We're blinding through here, right here. And we're attacking really, really fast, trying to get as many procs as possible. Some terrific synergies with the build right here with oil coating, granting me not just fire, but fire and cold percent increase. I'm able to get this number all the way up to around 14 or 15 stacks, which is an enormous amount of flat dodge and percent damage. Also, I said earlier, probably scaling fire damage a little bit more than cold, even though Morning Frost is pushing things up there. This is why. Get an extra 30% fire pen. I used to run Fire Eater, which is a great way to kind of smooth over life, recovery, mana issues. However, in the end game, when you can, really want to be able to go beyond the 5 stack cap to scale these up. So I do recommend, if you have a little bit of issue with mana or a little bit of issue with life or health, go ahead and take 3 points in here, and I guess you would sub them out of elusive in that case. You would be a little less tanky for sure. But Cinder Strike works incredibly well for the build. And now we're going to move on to the double whammy. This is a popular defensive layer, double defensive layer. We got Shift. I'm not going to spend much time on this, taking the pretty standard setup. We're not going to be taking Molting. The reason we're not taking that because we can't cleanse ourselves when we need to have ourselves ignited. It's worked out fine for me. The potion cleanses you anyway. Okay, I mean, it pretty much works that way, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Anyway, Shift here procs 5 shurikens at once, and that is going to grant you 150% increased armor. Probably not the first time you've seen this synergy here. So that is 150% increased armor combined with 100% increased armor. Total of 250% flat increased armor. I mean, they combine flat. They're not multiplicative with each other, but it is multiplicative with all of your flat armor, and that is how I got such an immense amount of armor. Truly an armor stacking rogue. So we're stacking, you know, a bit of glancing blow. In the passives, we'll see we're stacking armor, we're stacking dodge the natural way, and we're stacking endurance. And so if you're wondering how the heck did you survive on 12, 13, or 14k life doing 1,000 corruption in Echo or in a boss, well, dodging most things you can is obviously helps, but that's how. All of those defensive layers combined in there with endgame gear. I mean, yeah, you can actually do 1,000 corruption or above. I don't know exactly how far I could do with this build, but it definitely feels like it's kind of capping out at around this threshold, given the fact that do get kind of one-shot by some of the bigger hits anyway. So, shuriken, the rest here, just standard stuff, you know, not talking about this much here. This is synonymous with a lot of builds. The shuriken spin forward, they pierce. I will say this setup has even more value for this build than most because you might have noticed in the playthrough, I should have mentioned it, but if you go back, you can see that as I'm, you know, shifting around, using shuriken to disengage, I'm running forward, I'm passing monsters, they get hit, they get swiped by the ethereal blades here, and it procs dragon songs, and it can in fact just kind of naturally dragon breath without even pressing any buttons, essentially for like 3 whole seconds, and it can even just get through, stun, and even kill enemies without having to slow down or stop or anything in between, which is really nice. Some added value there. Yes, shurikens procs dragon fire just like everything else does. Detonating arrow with scaling fire, of course, partially because we get 2 extra points. I did mess around trying to scale cold, didn't work out too well. I don't like the delay anyway. It's a really fast-paced build. After all, so we're scaling everything we can possibly scale to increase the damage of this. Every single damage-related point has been taken for an instant proc detonate time anyway, including all 4 points here, all 5 points in here, 3 here. The only points I didn't take was weak spot. That's fine. We already got scaling percent multi like crazy anyway, and also didn't take infused discharge. I tried this one out a bit, but I mean, the result for taking this, more damage, but absolutely epic levels of mana drain and negative mana play. Given that dragon fire is so much of our damage anyway, it's not important to make major sacrifices to the playability of the build with like trying to stack up infused charge or what have you, just to get a little bit more detonating arrow out in the build. It's fine. The cool thing about this is that because we're not using the ability at all, we get to have our cake and eat it too with Thundersteel Arrow. This is actually impacting our build. It's full proc-based build. For whatever reason on the back end, the procs don't have a cooldown. So if I put Detonating Arrow on my bar, it will have a cooldown. But through the Explosive Trap, that overrides, doesn't have a cooldown, still works here. We don't get any value out of things like Rapid Detonation or Sucker Punch, though, or any of the increased things here. Unfortunately, can't take Copper Dust Arrow with this setup. So you can play around with some of this and go cold if you want, or lightning if you want, but I'm pretty sure you'll find, at the end of the day, fire is going to be the best. All right. Let's move on to the passives now. The first points that I'm showing right here are actually the final points. These are the last points you put in here. 4 flexible points at the end, so ignore these for now. Just a little bit of extra attack speed. These are essentially the 4 least valuable points that I have taken in the build. Of course, we're scaling dex to get some health. That's nice. Going to do 1, 5, 5 here. Get damage reduction while moving. Get some extra speed. Get a little extra damage. Glancing blow. No way in hell I'm going to skip that. Super mandatory points here for Cinder Strike. Get a whole bunch of mana and health back. That's why mana and was able to bounce back up as much as I was. Let's move over here to Blade Dancer here. Just take a few points. Again, Glancing Blow, Dex, extraordinarily valuable points here. Overall, should be a no-brainer why I'm taking those. Over here is a little bit of an interesting one. Wilderness Scout took 6 here, 5 here, and then 4 here. And I really only need 5 here, but I like Net. Net's pretty cool. I may not use it very often. I use it on the Wingari guys and then the experimental mob sometimes. It does come in handy. But anyway, it's just more of style points than anything. 1 passive point to get Net. And to me, that's the most sensible ability to use. I've tried using, there's no real inherent value to using like Smoke Mine or even like Decoy. You can use those if you want. I didn't see any major benefit out of it if you're not able to, specialize into those skills. Since we're going endurance, this is our only synergy here. You can go full higher life version if you want. I think that is absolutely viable. However, watch out for them stuns. If you decide to dump all of your endurance threshold and then just go for like a 2.4k life end game build, with like 500 or 600 endurance threshold, or maybe 700 after it's all said and done. I don't know. But anyway, we're going to move on. Bow attack speed, health gained, super good there. Dex, dodge, rating debuff. I don't think dodge rating debuff matters a whole lot, but anyway, that's some extra dex. Need these points to unlock this one, to unlock this over here. Don't need the crit strike avoidance. I'll show you blessings in a minute. Hopefully don't forget. Bow crit multi, pretty nice there. I suppose these points aren't actually super important, but they are the best place to get points to unlock in the back end. With this build, elemental arrows doesn't really have a place. Unfortunately, we get an extra 10% movement speed some of the time. Percent dodge, kind of a hard thing to get. We get a lot of flat dodge, so concentration is a good setup there. Arrow Storm, covering fire for the free Silver Shroud. Extremely valuable points here with Sharpshooter, granting a whole bunch of damage, and then the 200% shred, armor shred. It means you actually don't really need armor shred on any of your pieces. I like putting on the bow. I like having it up there because I like being able to at least see like 200, 300 stacks potentially. But you can skimp out on one of the shred points because you do get 200% armor shred here. Very fast attacking build after all. And stun is a big one. You saw stun was a mod on the bow. Stun is big right here. And stunning is very, very important. You can even stun bosses. Even at 1,000 corruptions, I still stun the monolith bosses occasionally. But stunning a lot of monsters that are coming in helps with a ton of survivability indirectly because of the nature of just how fast dragon fire goes out and just how it just sort of nukes everything right in front of you. Getting those enemies to stop. You see it especially in the arena maps. Just a major impact there. No, I did not actually try to do arena and see how far I could level the build, for the record. Barrage of Pain here, also pretty good. This is what helps smooth out a crit chance. We don't need to get any of it rolled on our gear, per se. And then, of course, massive amount of crit multi. And the health on crit, mandatory here. We need the health on crit to help our recovery. Otherwise, it would just be Cinder Strike giving us any recovery. This way, everything gives us recovery because we're critting everything, and even drag a song. So I mean, you're hitting things 10 times a second with all attacks. This is a pretty significant amount of recovery. Ethereal arrows, I used to put more points in this, but decided not really worth that much. This doesn't apply to the detonate arrow procs, by the way. Just really the damage increase really only applies to explosive trap. Very, very good here. This will be for, of course, Cinder Strikes. Increasing mana. You could try play. I didn't really, or not for a long time, but I tried playing without these points. You could experiment, maybe not take those points, but I think you're probably going to need it. We got detonating arrow area here. Actually, not super mandatory, but just 2 points right here. I like seeing bigger, wider explosions. I don't know about you. But yeah. Anyway. Let's go over to blessings, which that's embarrassing. I forgot. I actually forgot what the hotkey for that is. So I'm going to show you the hard way. We'll just go down here. And any of these are fine. I did increase glove drop rate because I'm farming frost gloves there. Here's a big one. We need 39% or preferably 40% crit multi. You'll have to take, I believe it's void res if you don't have a res on there, but you should probably get crit multi, get the res somewhere else. Stun chance, oh yeah, one more big place for stun. I would recommend getting mana here, actually. I think it's mana. Yeah, I believe it's mana. If you don't have any mana roll on your gear, I'd recommend mana instead of stun. That one doesn't really matter. 20 all res. Gotta have these are the value. The value, point value is just crazy there. Gotta get that. Have to get shred cold here. You're not gonna shred cold worth a damn any other way. Gotta get it on here. If you want to be shredding cold, getting that morning frost scaling kicked in real good, you're gonna want that here. Because we get fire shred through cinder strike primarily, and then we get cold shred through everything right here. So we actually have cold shred even more than fire shred. You really need a high roll armor, flat armor here when you're scaling the armor the way I was, and then that one doesn't really matter. Okay, so there it is. I believe we're done. Hopefully the video wasn't too terribly long, but at any rate, let's go down to the very end here where I'm bringing you the LastEpochTools planner. And again, this is linked in the description below. I'm not going to go over it in big detail. I just want to, reveal to you that it is here and that most of the gear here is quite representative to what I crafted. In many cases, they're a one-to-one match. But in some cases, they're not. So it gives me great pleasure to not have to tell you, well, guys, I'm pretty sure if you scale it up all the way beyond what I did, if you level it up to 100, if you actually get some of the legendaries on here, that the build will play just fine, right? You don't have to take my word for it. You got to see it in action. You can see more of it in action if you go to Twitch and watch me live there. Although we will be switching over to Path of Exile here pretty soon, for the record. But there it is. You can scale these down. You can move things around. I got it set up on max, so you can see that, if you're anywhere near max, you're going to be capped out on the resistances. It can be pretty hard to get that. But yeah, play around with that. And let me know, what do you think of the fire sprinkler build that was obviously inspired by a Fire Song Max Roll build guide initially, but has evolved with some interesting items like Immolation Ablation, Soulfire, and super end game gearing, scaling. Let me know if you think there are any other specific gear pieces that you think would be better than this, because it is a brand new game. Might be some things I'm not aware of. I have looked into things pretty deep, have had some commentary, so I think I got just about everything right. Maximized, but you never know. But I would like to make intelligent choices with all this gold that I spent, so do tell, pray tell. That would be great. But that's it for me in this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this build guide, this showcase, and if you try this build, relish in the fact that the scaling is really cool here. I started with only 30 or 40 dexterity, which means I needed way less cold and physical resist to cover my end, and I needed way fewer dexterity rolls to cover my end. And even at 30 or 40 dexterity, it was totally capable, and no belt like this, by the way, totally capable of doing 100, 200, 300 corruption. So it's nice, smooth sailing, or scaling, I guess I should say, to the top once you get things figured out, get the gear pieces in here. Merchant Guild will help you gear some of these pieces, but absolutely, I mean, you can go Circle of Fortune. This gearing came through the Merchant Guild, absolutely. I bought tons of bases. This is how I was able to get such stellar exalted items. I bought hundreds of each slot until I was able to craft items that were this good, and I got like 10 different backups of things that have different rolls on them. So I do want to shed that light to you guys. That's it for this video. I appreciate you watching, sticking around all the way to the end, and please do enjoy this build. A lot of love went into it, and I sure love playing it, and I hope you will too. That's it for now. Thank you for watching.